that are criteria for the diagnosis.
Right. But you need 5 of 9 to get to the diagnosis. You've already told us that you didn't make a diagnosis. You're just identifying traits, correct?
I'm identifying traits that are consistent with the diagnosis, yes.
Right. And did you testify in deposition that the existence of traits as opposed to the disorder doesn't have a correlation with IPV?
If I said traits do not have a correlation with the, if that's what I said, and I don't remember saying that, but that wouldn't be a correct thing. Narcissism has a correlation with the diagnosis. Yes, that part's true.
All right, how far are we going to back this up? Because there's a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, right?
Yes, sir.
And that one is tied, has some correlation with IPV, right?
Narcissism has correlation with IPV. Again, sir, you're not allowing me to answer. You're splitting hairs. You're splitting hairs between the traits that are consistent with, which all I'm commenting on is behaviors and traits that are consistent with the diagnosis. And Mr. Depp, narcissism absolutely has risk factors associated with IPV.
Let's go back again, and maybe we can focus on the question I ask you, and we can get an answer that's addressed to that question. Narcissistic personality disorder is a risk factor for IPV, yes or no?
Yes.
And you've previously testified that there is no literature at which you are currently aware that the mere presence of narcissistic traits is a risk factor for IPV.
Am I answering the question?
Yes.
That's incorrect.
You didn't testify to that.
A cluster B traits, which narcissistic personality disorder is part of, is a huge risk factor for intimate partner violence, which cluster B traits include antisocial personality disorder, amongst others. So the answer to the question is every resource on intimate partner violence will support that cluster B traits, where narcissistic personality falls under partner violence.
Any single trait is a risk factor for IPV.
Again, I will repeat, cluster B traits. I didn't say any trait. I said cluster. No,
let me be more precise then.
Okay.
Any narcissistic trait in and of itself is a risk factor for IPV.
But you are mischaracterizing what I said. What I said, I'm pretty sure I said cluster. If you look at all the intimate partner violence literature, and it would behoove you to do so, you will see that cluster B traits, I didn't say narcissistic per se, cluster B traits, where narcissistic personality disorder is part of, are risk factors for intimate partner violence, part and parcel, uniformly true. And I'm not sure, the thing I don't understand is I'm not sure why we're arguing psychiatry, because I'm telling you what it is.
Dr. Siegel, you just need to answer the questions.
Okay.
So you want to talk about cluster B, so let's do that for a minute. Borderline personality disorder is a risk factor for IPV.
As part of cluster B traits, yes.
Right. Histrionic personality disorder is a risk factor for IPV.
Less so.
But it
less so.
It's good.
Less so. I mean, it's a risk factor, but less so, yes.
Yeah.
Less so. Significantly less so.
All right. So which traits under narcissistic, before I move on there, there's only been one diagnosis in court of personality disorders, correct?
I'm not sure who you're referring to. Are you referring to Mr. Depp, Ms. Hurt? I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Do you understand that there was a medical examination done of Ms. Hurt?
Yes, I did.
Do you understand that the testimony was ultimately that Ms. Heard suffers from 2 personality disorders.
Okay, so I'm just being specific. I just wanted to know if you're talking about Ms. Heard or Mr. Depp. So that's all I was asking you.
Yes or no to my question?
Which was there's only one diagnosis of, Ms. Heard was diagnosed with that.
Yeah, and both of the diagnoses are in cluster B, and both of them are risk factors for IPV.
But both those cluster B things are, I'm not allowed to comment on the testing, so therefore, all I could say is that cluster B traits, and I'll tell you what they are, and by the way, I testified this before, which was that, 1, I don't expect perfection from my victims. 2, absolutely there were cluster B traits Ms. Heard had. Absolutely Ms. Heard had cluster B.
Given that you've testified to it before, let's move on